I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and demolished buildings falling all over. It's just a terrible sight.
Artificial intelligence is supposed to be the great disruptor in technology and governance. Similarly, President Donald Trump in his second term is proving to be a great disruptor of international relations. Be it his plans to displace Palestinians to build the Riviera of the Middle East, as he calls it, be it his plans to take over the Panama Canal, be it his plans to purchase Greenland, or even the tariff wars. These issues are basically upending global diplomacy as we know it. To discuss these issues, we have with us Shri Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. Namaskar and welcome to Samvad at Mayank sir. Since we are discussing the great disruptor, as I call him after his recent press conferences, Donald Trump, sir, we have all heard what he said with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his press conference. But still, for those who have not heard what he has said, I'll repeat a few important salient points. So he says that he's got plan to take over Gaza, dismantle unexploded ordinances, and redevelop it into a prosperous hub and a magnificent area. He's talked of US being in an ownership position vis-a-vis Gaza, this decision not being taken lightly. He's talked of Gaza being a place of death, destruction, and rubble, and a dangerous place to be and only going to get worse. Now, he suggested relocation of Palestinians from Gaza to Egypt and Jordan, and said that he envisions Gaza becoming the Riviera of the Middle East. Sir, what do you make of all this?
Well, it shows a great deal of insensitivity to the entire Palestinian issue, the history, the conflicts that have gone on in this area for years and years, the aspirations of the Palestinians, the manner in which Israel has occupied these territories and continues to build settlements on the West Bank, for instance, and the general, what they call the Zionist plans to extend the geographical area of Israel. And Gaza, of course, has a history, as you know. The Israelis were in Gaza until, I think, 2009 or something like that. I've forgotten the exact date. And then it became very unmanageable. And it was a big burden, military and otherwise, to manage this because of resistance and Hamas. So they vacated it. And then they followed a different track. I'm just giving a little background of dividing the Palestinian liberation movement by having the PLO or the PLA on the West Bank and Gaza under Hamas. And between Hamas and the PLA, there was no love lost. In fact, they were at loggerheads with each other. And this was a way to keep the Palestinian movement divided so that the entire project of a Palestinian state could not be achieved. The whole issue of a two-state solution and two states living peacefully side by side, etc., etc. Then, I skip a few things, then you come to the Abraham Accords, where led by the son-in-law of Trump during his first administration, that rather than look at the future of this area in terms of conflict and Israel versus the Palestinians, let's look at this area in terms of economic development, economic prosperity. And, uh, and for that, it was absolutely necessary to have the Arab countries buy into this bigger project of West Asia, as we call it, uh, so that the focus would not be on what Israel was doing, but on what could be done in terms of denying Palestinian rights, but what could be done in order to find an economic solution to the conflict, which would open up prospects for peace and prosperity, even for the Palestinians, but with the support of the key Arab countries. Because Egypt was already, as you know, they have a peace treaty with Israel. So does Jordan. Iraq is finished. The Arab resistance, that was finished. Syria was an outlier, but now, of course, Syria has also been knocked out. And this was also a way to play on Iran, Gulf countries, solve the differences in order to have a prospect of developments in this area which would keep the Iranians out. So this project seemed to have got some steam. As you know, there was the ITU2. India bought into this also through this India, Israel, UAE, and USA. And then later on, during the G20, the IMET, India, Middle East, European corridor, because this was predicated on Israel playing a role, because the India Middle East economic corridor was to go through Haifa in Israel. Now that Trump has come back to power, so he's again looking at the entire situation from the viewpoint of how to have economic growth in this area, bring about prosperity, which will then reduce the salience of the territorial conflict. So everybody joins in to bring prosperity. And of course, to cut a long story short, what happened in October 7, the Hamas terrorist attacks, Israel's extremely violent response, where they have actually flattened out northern Gaza with a clear intention of making it unlivable. That there's no way that the Palestinians can come back, where there's nothing to come back to. There are no buildings left, there are no hospitals, no education, no schools, nothing. No water supply, nothing of the kind. Now, the issue now is that if Gaza has to be made livable, it can't be done in the present situation where you have 1 million or 2 million people in this area with nothing to support them. As he said, there are unexploded munitions, there is that. The whole area has to be rebuilt. So he's come up with this idea, Trump, I mean, that these 1 million people, or whatever the number, should be displaced from Gaza, moved to Egypt and Jordan. And then United States will take over the responsibility from Israel or anybody else to rebuild this area. Now, if you go back to Trump's first term, even then Jared Kushner was talking about developing the waterfront of Gaza, even at that time, because Gaza is on the coast, and therefore creating a waterfront there, maybe like in Florida, I don't know. So, and then there is all this talk that there is a lot of gas in Gaza, so that can also be exploited. So here Trump has come out with this idea that remove this population, as he said, either for some time or for a long time. And we will take the responsibility of developing this area and make the waterfront into a Riviera, Gaza, with absolutely no thought on a couple of things. One, moving 1 million people is an enormous burden to assume. And then you put them in Egypt and Jordan. They can't house them. Jordan is already overpopulated, and their population, I forget the figure, is almost 50% Palestinian. So if more Palestinians come in, then the Jordan monarchy is finished. So they don't want them. And Egypt doesn't want these people because Egypt fears that some terrorist activity will get resumed from Sinai if they are put in Sinai. And then Egypt will become the target of a direct conflict with Israel when Israel reacts. So they don't want them. So they don't want the Palestinians. Other than that, it would mean that all of them would be living for an indefinite period of time in tents. That's hardly a prospect for such a large number of people. If it was 10,000, 20,000, okay, it can be managed. But 1 million people under tents? So it's a bizarre idea. It's not only a bizarre idea, it is almost inhuman in the manner in which it has been delineated, with absolutely no thought about how it will affect these poor Palestinians who are being subjected to this kind of a future prospect. Now, as you know, Egypt has rejected it, Jordan has rejected it. Arab countries have got together and rejected this plan. And then there is this sort of talk, rightly or wrongly, that since Trump is a real estate mogul, so he's looking at it as a real estate opportunity. So you build up a whole city, housing, this and that, waterfront, and US companies can make enormous profit out of this. So I think this is a reflection of Trump's lack of diplomatic finesse. And more than that, his feeling that, or his belief that America can say anything and propose anything and get away with it, and that the views of the affected people, whether Palestinians or the states around or the Arab world in general, don't matter much because at the end of the day, they are in many ways dependent on the United States. As you know, when this US aid has been in a sense undone as an institution, the aid to Egypt and Israel has not been touched. This is part of the 1967 accord, and it is the foundation of peace between Egypt and Israel. So therefore, he probably feels that Egypt, in any case, is economically a very weak country, and it depends on support from outside, and the American support is very vital. So is that of Saudi. So is the support that Saudi Arabia gives to Egypt. And Jordan is in their pocket because Jordan, the royal household, is terribly, terribly vulnerable. UAE is very manageable from the US point of view. And therefore, and then another important angle to this, why he has come out with this extremely provocative proposal, is that the belief is that Iran has been weakened, terribly weakened, especially after the fall of Assad. And they're in no position now to put pressure on Israel through Syria. So Iran has been weakened. And Russia has been weakened because Russia, which had supported for so many years Assad and ensured his survival, finally had to effectively cease to be a broker, a power broker in Syria. And its interest now is to see if it can save its 2 bases there. And for the rest, they're not in a position to really counter the Americans. They're themselves involved in Ukraine. So Russia has been weakened, Iran has been weakened, the Arab states, he feels is in their pocket, and there is this total commitment to Israel and its expansionist policies. That is the background of this. It is something which won't fly and which will continue to be a big diplomatic and political issue in the United Nations, in the international community, in the Arab world, in the global South. So there it is.
So when we speak of Jordan and Egypt and the dependence on US, the US is also dependent on these countries because it allows them to have a presence in the region. So they have rejected the proposal anyway. Hamas has obviously rejected it. I was reading a statement, Major General Shlomi Binder, he's the IDF Intel Chief. And in one of his assessment to his boss, Israel Katz, the defense minister, he says that the region could go up in fire. Later he's retracted. Now he's saying that it was his assessment because he was asked to give an assessment. So he says that the region could go up in fire. So what I'm looking at, while the Arab street has been very silent till now. So what I wanted to know from you is how will the Arab street react if and when President Trump tries to make this provocative talk into a reality?
A couple of things. First of all, what you said about United States also being dependent on these countries, whether Egypt or Jordan or what have you, it's not quite so. Because look at, on the one hand, Trump's agenda is that he'll become an energy superpower. And he declared an energy emergency, baby drill, so that United States becomes totally energy independent, which means that it is no longer has to rely on the oil in the Middle East. And also it will weaken OPEC when America plays this kind of a role in terms of energy production and energy commerce in the world. The dependence, well, one could also say that United States is dependent on India because they can derive a lot of benefits from India. So that kind of interdependence to some extent is always there, but it's not critical. For the Arab countries, it's very critical, their dependence on the United States. But the other way around is not equally true, but that's one aspect. And the other is the question of the Arab street. Now, a couple of things here. First of all, the Palestinians are generally very unpopular in the Arab world. As you know, from Kuwait, they were expelled lock, stock, and barrel. Then, as you know, they were expelled lock, stock, and barrel also from Jordan. And Yasser Arafat had to go all the way to Tunisia, Tunis. And he stayed there for a number of years. The Arabs don't think that the Palestinians are Arabs. They are Phoenicians, they are Mediterranean people. And they see them as troublemakers. And there's a lot of anger of some anger or whatever you might say, distaste for Hamas. Because Hamas is, even from their point of view, is a terrorist organization. It is part of this entire Muslim Brotherhood, that kind of extremist complex. Today, you find Saudi Arabia is trying to distance itself as much as possible from Wahhabism and this kind of extremely conservative Islam, or from Islamism in general. UAE has moved far away from this already. They are thinking of a very different future for themselves. Now, Arab Street. Now, these are not democratic countries. Popular opinion cannot be expressed. There are no political parties. There is no free press. And so therefore, they have various ways of actually of suppressing public opinion. But beyond that, it's not simply a question of suppressing public opinion. It is because these countries are very prosperous. And the core population, let's say, of UAE, the Arabs, is very small. In fact, the expatriate population is bigger than the local population. So they can easily satisfy that population. Saudi Arabia has a large Arab population, but their plans of And they're looking after that population quite well with a lot of freebies and this and that, though, of course, uh, because of some uh, economic pressures, they have not brought the Arabs, the Saudi Arabs into the working population. Because earlier on, they were not, they were not very much part of the working population either. They were living on the rent that the oil prices was bringing in. Um, uh, so they have means to control the state for three reasons. One, that they don't have, 4 reasons: empathy with the Palestinians. Number two, this terrorism angle. Third, this their ability to manage public opinion. And fourth, to ensure that their population, the local population, the Arab population, partakes of a certain degree of prosperity, and therefore they have a stake in the system. So I'm sure you have also noticed this the last so many decades. Where has been this Arab street? There are no popular demonstrations allowed. It's not as if this is the first time there is a crisis in Palestine. It's a continuing crisis. And despite what Israel was doing in terms of the West Bank and settlement and encroachments into East Jerusalem, and ringing Jerusalem with settlements so that there could never be the East Jerusalem could never be a capital of a Palestinian state, making sure that physically no viable Palestinian state could be created because of the manner in which they had uh, split the West Bank into separate enclaves, etc. And this was going on, and despite that, you had ITU2 and you had IMET, and in which Saudi Arabia and UAE are very much a part and a willing part. But the Arab street has not reacted despite this continuing long-term crisis which Israel has actually constantly promoted through its settlement policies and its persecution of the Palestinians.
So there are two sides of reaction to two sides when it comes to this statement. Now the critics say that this amounts to ethnic cleansing. The idea amounts to ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. And the persons in favor, they say that this is an opportunity for economic prosperity and talk of Gaza being the sort of new Dubai, I would say. After the October 7th attack by the Hamas, the two-state, that formula is in deep trouble. So people say that what is the harm in trying out what Donald Trump is suggesting? Because there is no other, what should I say, an opportunity seems to be available to resolve this issue. What would you say?
Look, I mean, this way you can justify all high-handed actions, territorial expansionism, conquest, and everything else. You can say that let's go back to the era of colonialism, and these very prosperous, rich countries will help you rebuild your economies. And Africa is in a mess. So if the Europeans were to come back, if the Americans were to come back, they'll bring prosperity. It's not as simple as that. But leave that aside. There is history, there is historical memory, there is territorial attachment, there's a sense of belonging, and it's very deep-rooted in human psyche. Now, if these people, the Palestinians who have lived there for centuries, they will never accept the fact that they can be divested of this land, or they can be thrown out of this land. They are attached to it, emotionally attached to it. This is their home. They can't simply be displaced from their original home and settled somewhere else as refugees and this and that. So this is one, it is actually dismissing the core human sentiment or people's sentiment when it comes to their territorial belongingness, if you allow me to use that word. That is one aspect. Secondly, it is ethnic cleansing, that you remove these people from the territory where they have lived for generations. Um, and Look, there is another aspect to it. Who are the people in Gaza? Who are the Gazans? They are the ones who were thrown out in 1948 when Israel was created from the territory which is today Israel. So they already have been displaced once and shoved into Gaza. And now from Gaza, they're going to be theoretically removed again and after ethnic cleansing from Israel proper, now ethnic cleansing from their own lands uh, and displaced into neighboring countries to which they don't really belong. Now, insofar as bringing American capital and developing this area and this and that, how long will it take? 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? And after 10, 15, 20 years, these people living in tents, and then you will say, you come back. They will develop their roots wherever they are. And bringing them back. See, the other thing is you build all this housing and everything else and this and that for whom?
Exactly.
For whom? Are you doing this for the Palestinian people who are being asked to leave that? But it is a much simpler solution. Then go back to the drawing board and create two states. Give them 2 states. That is a much more permanent solution to the whole problem. Of course, make sure that the security threat is removed and some kind of security arrangements are put in place, which would give Israel also a sense of security as well as to the Palestinians. So, but you shift the argument a little bit. Now, so many countries are in a mess. Iran is in a bit of a mess today, economically and this and that. So you can make the argument that remove the regime and bring the West in, and they bring property develops and this and that, and project developers, and they'll come and develop Iran and this and that. I mean, it's ridiculous, this kind of an idea. Or look at the Tibetans. The argument could well then be that the Chinese are bringing prosperity to the Tibetans and to the Uyghurs and this and that solves the problem. But it doesn't solve the problem because there are deeper issues of belonging and the sense that the country or the territory belongs to you. You have certain generational rights to that space, and simply telling you that we can bring prosperity to you is just not good enough. It's not a strict parallel, but what I mean is that this argument that with superior economic strength, you can disregard these kind of fundamental issues of territory and belongingness to a territory, I think that doesn't work.
There are a few developments also happening around the US foreign policy. US aid is gradually being dismantled by President Trump and his team. And they say that it was a tool for foreign interference, spending money on people who didn't actually need it. So it was all interference. Now, Secretary Marco Rubio, I was reading his statements. He says that we are now in a multipolar world with multi-great powers in different parts of the planet. And that the post-war global order is not just obsolete, it is now a weapon being used against us. They're imposing tariffs on supposed allies like Mexico, Canada, EU. Now, during his confirmation procedure, that which happens with the US system, he said that under President Trump, the top priority of the US Department of State must be and will be the United States. The direction he has given for the conduct of our foreign policy is clear. every dollar we spend, every program we fund, and every policy we pursue must be justified with the answer to three simple questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Does it make America more prosperous? So sort of a MAGA thing which has been going on. So is this an effective way of saying that the US is basically isolating itself and it is no longer an indispensable nation and it will look after its own interests? But then he again goes on to say that he again says that placing our core national interest above all else is not just isolationism. So I'm not able to decode what he's trying to say, sir. Help me.
Well, what he is trying to say is that our our preeminent position has been challenged because of certain developments, because of certain policies that were pursued by uh, Trump's predecessors, whether it's Biden or Obama, uh, and that some of these policies had resulted in weakening the economic fabric of the United States. Uh, and with these kind of mistakes, other powers got more room, and therefore they become more influential in global politics, and hence these references to multipolarity, which he's seeing as a challenge. So the whole idea is not isolation. The idea is to make United States preeminent again, totally preeminent again. That kind of dilution of its preeminence, which occurred in recent years, has to be countered. So make America great again is not to sit back in your drawing room, watch television, and have a cup of coffee and say, I'm great. No, it's because to dominate the rest of the world uh, decisively, decisively. But in a way that does not dissipate American um, American power and also its economic sinews. It should be done in a different way. And a part of that would be this anti-globalization business that manufacturing has moved out of United States. So we bring back manufacturing in. And then we, of course, the United States will make sure that in the area of technology, in which they are being now challenged by China, they must regain their strength. So the whole program is not isolationism. The whole program is, as I said, a reassertion indisputably of America as the preeminent power in the world by abjuring certain policies that were being pursued and pursuing certain policies which will build up America's economic sinews by eliminating waste, because they've seen that a lot of money has been spent through US aid on all sorts of things. And this entire aid business has been a kind of a burden on the US taxpayer. So they want to get out of it. So that's how one should construe what the American or Trump's view of things is. This Make America Great Again has a domestic objective, but also has an international objective that America's greatness must be now accepted by the rest of the world in the years ahead. And there should not be a feeling that America has been weakened or America has lost ground, because in some ways it has, but America is going to recuperate that the loss that it has suffered on the economic and political. Now, for example, when he said that, when he has been saying that if I was in power, Russia would not have attacked Ukraine. No, what does that mean? It can mean two things: that I would have had some understanding with Putin and therefore prevented this war from taking place, or he would have actually shown his teeth, because he's been saying that I'm the president who imposed the most sanctions on Russia, which he did. He's the one who started. So Uh, to sum up what the answer to your question is that the manner in which he's showing total disregard for the rest of the world by abandoning the Paris Agreement, the WHO, the UN Human Rights Commission, claiming Greenland, the Panama Canal, territorial expansionism of the United States. This is not a project of a uh, limiting American power within the global system. It is a project of expanding US power so that it is not challenged the way it has been in life.
Sir, Gaza does not seem to be the only real estate President Trump seems interested in. He's also looking for the Panama Canal and Greenland. While his arguments over the Panama Canal seems to be logical, I mean, Greenland is, for most of the people, known to be the residence of Santa Claus. So I'm not sure whether that interests President Trump. So what exactly is he looking for in Greenland?
No, but even Panama Canal, I don't think there's any legitimacy to his position. After all, the French and the British can argue they built the Suez Canal, and therefore they have a right uh, uh, to the Suez Canal. After all, America opposed them in 1956, actively opposed the Franco-British invasion of Egypt. But here he's reversing the logic simply because the US built the Panama Canal at a time when there was colonialism and expansionism of territories and what have you. This is an entire different phase of international relations and history. After 1945 and the UN, this and that, it's the UN Charter that governs international conduct. So it doesn't make any sense. Now, they can have some kind of a bilateral agreement with Panama if they want some special concessions from Panama for the fee that is being charged or facility of their military naval ships going through Panama Canal on a priority basis. These are matters of negotiations. But you can't say that it belongs to me.
Basically,
Firstly,
referring to the Chinese control of the canal.
But of course, we have our own problem with China, so I don't want to get into a position where I, in a sense, overlook the problem that China is creating for everyone, including us. But at the same time, why can't China? They have developed ports even in Europe, even in Piraeus in Greece, a NATO country, even Rotterdam, which is a NATO country. They have developed ports there. In Portugal, they have developed ports there. So what is so special about doing something in the Panama Canal? Now, if America feels that this is a kind of a security threat, then they can certainly, on a diplomatic at the diplomatic level, talk to Panama and negotiate with them. But they can't impose unilaterally a solution on them. Anyway, so far as Greenland is concerned, if you read his inaugural speech, many have missed that, but when I was hearing, I didn't miss that. In one of the paragraphs, he talks about the territorial expansion of the United States. He mentioned Greenland, but it was quite clear what he has in mind. And he's had this conversation with the Danish Prime Minister, which I believe was very unpleasant, very unpleasant. And the Danish Prime Minister or the Europeans initially thought that Trump, as usual, was overstating things. It was his style, rhetoric, and this and that. But they concluded that he is really serious. And he has said publicly that he'll acquire Greenland either through negotiation or by force. Now, if he thinks that he says that, first of all, he says that we need Greenland to protect the free world. I mean, frankly, what does that mean? protect. Is India protected because he goes into Greenland? I mean, it's not the case at all. And um, and then he says that they need it for their national security. Now, why is that? I can um, one can give reasons why he wants that. Now, the Arctic route is potentially opening up. And it's Russia that dominates the Arctic route. And China will also greatly benefit from it. Currently, the other countries which have some coasts on the Arctic and therefore have a say in the management of the Arctic route are Canada and Denmark through Greenland and Norway. But the principal power is Russia. America wants to be able to control that route. And it can only control the route if really it has a say in terms of the management of the Arctic sea route, which is why they want Greenland. Number two, Greenland has a lot of rare earths and oil and gas, and this opens up a lot of opportunities for exploiting these resources. Now, I am a bit puzzled because America is the fourth largest country in the world. It's a huge, huge country. So I don't know why they want, they have a lot of gas and oil. In any case, the largest producer of oil and gas. So why do they want to provide more oil and gas in Greenland? And insofar as the rare earths and other things are concerned, America was producing all this themselves until their companies moved to China, because these are highly polluting industries. And therefore, they allow China to develop the processing capabilities, and now they dominate the market. If America wants to develop its own resources, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this. I'm sure they have these resources, but leave that aside. Look at the environmental issues involved. This is one pristine space left in the world like the Antarctica. And for environmental reasons, purely environmental reasons, the interest of the entire humanity is involved. It's not simply the United States of America. The other thing is that if it's a question of security, they already have an American base there. They can have more American bases. That Denmark is willing. In fact, they would be very happy if the solution was that, look, you want more troops there, okay. We are both NATO countries, and if you want more troops, fine. We'll give you more bases. Of course, they got money from it. So Trump has also said that I do not know what Denmark's legal claim is on Greenland. That's also a very odd statement to make. So it's pure 19th century politics. Nothing, it's the writ of the strong. I want that territory, I'll take it. And since Russia is weakened and there is no countervailing power, and China is being very careful, their interests largely are in the South China Sea and the Western Pacific and Taiwan and all that. They're not going to confront America over Greenland. So I think Trump feels that he has enough geopolitical space to make these claims, and he's totally disregarding the sentiments in Europe and European interests, because Europe, so it believes that there is an imperial power to the east, Russia, which is taking over what could be European territory in Ukraine. And now they have an imperial power in the west, which is actually taking over European Union territory, because Ukraine is not European territory. So Europe is in an extremely difficult position. Now, let me say something to balance things. Now, the arguments I am giving and the line I'm taking would make it appear as if I'm anti-US, I'm anti-Trump, and this and that and that. I'm separating our bilateral relations with the United States and a logical view, an analytical view of what are, how one should look at Trump's policies at the larger international level. And on that, I think his policies are dangerous. because today he's claiming Greenland openly. So this only encouraged China to say, look, if you can claim Greenland without any reason, we can certainly claim Taiwan. And we can also certainly claim more Indian territory. Why not? Because we are strong and we have the means, and therefore we'll claim. And this can be the case with many others. There are so many territorial disputes in the world. So if the stronger country feels that there is no law to be observed, there is no UN Charter, and UN Security Council is in any case ineffective, so we'll do what we please. It's a very bad precedent that is being set. And but we have bilateral relations with the United States, including with the Trump government, which has so many positive dimensions for us, which we would like to build on. And that will be the purpose and sense of our Prime Minister's visit to Washington in a few days. Now, that is a different set of issues, which has nothing to do with how one can look as an observer at what is clearly unilateralist policies of the United States of America, which even in our bilateral relations can potentially cause issues.
We're truly observing things and trying to analyze it, sir. That is the motto. And coming to our bilateral relations between India and US, they have been growing stronger over a period of time. Perhaps the best relations India has as of now is with the United States, much better than before. But this visit, the impending visit of the Prime Minister to the US, there is a talk of tariffs, that tariff war starting between India and US. And then we had these very unholy sides of these deportees being chained. I mean, it might be US law. I have no comments to offer on the US law as to how they treat their deportees. But making visuals and circulating those visuals was very poor optics. At a personal level, I would say it was very poor optics. So, I'm trying to basically judge as to whether it was done intentionally with the idea of playing hardball with India. So, and just before the visit of the Prime Minister. So, how do you see all this, sir? And what expectations should India have from Trump 2.0?
Trump has made his expectations from India known even before this visit. After his telephonic call with Prime Minister Modi, in the readout that the White House gave on the telephonic call, there were two issues on which he made his demands known. One, buy more security equipment from India, and B, open up your market because your tariffs are too high. So he said this publicly, knowing that this visit was in the offing, because he said also that Prime Minister would be visiting Washington, visiting White House very soon. So it was an advance message he sent that this will be on his agenda. So you come prepared with whatever you have to give as a response. So I'm sure the Prime Minister has reflected on this. He's got his advice. They've done their homework, and they will take a particular line. My belief is that already, as you know, in our budget, we have reduced tariffs on some issues, some items which are of interest to the United States, including the motorcycles. But that's not sufficient at all. That could be a talking point, simply to say that we are already on track. But if you want further, deeper tariff cuts from us, then we should do it on a bilateral basis, because you are our biggest trade partner as a single country. And therefore, we have also interest in accessing your market more than we have. You've already reduced the GSP preferences from us. You slapped tariffs on our aluminium and steel exports. So you also raised tariff barriers. So let's have, therefore, a trade agreement where we ask you what are your areas of interest where you want us to reduce tariffs, and we'll tell you what our interests are. And then we can have a negotiation and reach some viable solution on that. Because otherwise, because of MFN, if you reduce your duties on items, any item, medical devices or agricultural products or what have you, who will take the biggest benefit? The China, because America is not always competitive. So, but if it is part of a bilateral agreement, then it's different. Then we are mutually reducing tariffs and all that. So I think this will be the line that will be taken, but it will be a point of pressure because beyond a certain point, we simply can't go to satisfy the United States, especially in agriculture. Extremely sensitive issue. Within the WTO, we have stood our ground very strongly with regard to our these MSPs and the stocks of grain and rice, wheat and rice and everything else. And therefore, we can engage Trump in a process where, as they say, when the Quad summit takes place in the autumn, by then we'll be able to strike some bilateral deal. So that could be a viable strategy. Insofar as the security equipment is concerned, what they have in mind is the Striker armed personnel carrier and the Javelin anti-tank missile. The view here by people who know more about these things than I do, that neither of the two is of any great interest to us. That so far as Striker armored vehicles are concerned, we can manufacture those ourselves. And likewise, anti-tank guided missiles. Now we have this project of additional aircraft. Now, at the moment, we do not know which way it will go. But the Americans, I am sure, feeling very left out because they lost their the contract for our planes for our aircraft carrier to the French. I think we're going to sign with the Rafales, and they had the F-18. They had the F-18. They were pressing very hard for that. So they've always wanted. The F-35 is just a no-go. There's no way that India will buy F-35s. Now, what is it that we can buy from them, especially when we want to build our own indigenous manufacturing defense capabilities as part of Atmanirbharta. So the line we will take, I'm sure, is that, look, let's do a win-win situation. We bought already 24 billion worth. Where we feel that there is need to buy things from you, underwater sea technology or whatever else, some niche things, we can buy from you, but let's follow a more productive path where we jointly develop and produce. And since we can bring economy, we can do it in a more economical way. We can also explore the export market. But I don't think the United States has done this kind of a thing. They're not in that mode where they want to do joint production and this and that. But this will be a point of pressure, and we'll have to see where we can get them off our back a little bit by entering into some fresh defense contracts. But there would be people in India who would very genuinely feel that this is the wrong road to go. Unless we have some autonomy in terms of our defense manufacturing, we will always be dependent on others, and we'll never be an influential power in the world. Maybe the thing can be deflected to space, to these modular nuclear reactors, where again we want to develop them ourselves. We are changing our legislation on nuclear cooperation. Maybe that will give some opening. That we can deflect this thing by saying that there are areas in which you can do things together, space included. Then there will be a pressure from Elon Musk on Tesla and on Starlink. And on Tesla, I believe that what now Elon Musk is trying to sell to us is that I can that they can set up production facilities for automobile parts for the electrical vehicles in India. And will be tied to the German plant, not to the Chinese plant. That whatever is brought from in terms of vehicles will be from Germany and not from China, with the allurement that we will build up, like we've done with trying to do with iPhones, that we build more and more parts in India. And on Starlink, I don't know what the position of government would be, because we lose all control over the if it is coming from the skies here. If it is not satellite based and current mechanisms are there, we can exert a little more control. But let's see how it goes. But this will be a point of pressure.
We can only look forward to this, what seems to be a very interesting visit and interesting times ahead, sir. Thank you so much for sparing time for us. Thank you and Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind, Jai Hind.